the sky was on fire. Not the blaze of war, not yet, but the dry orange burn of prairie grass gone wild in the wind. The kind of fire that comes without warning, rising fast and low, eating the earth before the smoke has a chance to climb. Somewhere in the distance, someone screamed. Not a battle cry, not even fear. Just that hollow sound a human makes when they've already realized no help is coming. It was May 1832, and the Illinois frontier had turned uneasy. The Black Hawk War hadn't begun officially, not on paper. But if you asked the men on horseback, the women clutching children behind log walls, the boys staring at shadows near the tree line, they'd tell you it had already started. Something was moving out there, something old, something angry, and maybe, just maybe, something justified. At the center of it stood a man who had spent his entire life trying to stop what was coming. His name was Shabbona, Potawatomi war chief, diplomat, survivor, betrayer, depending on who you asked. He had walked with Tecumseh, ridden with U.S. generals, held the dying, buried the betrayed. He'd made peace his mission, and it had cost him more than war ever did. And this is the story of how they killed his nephew anyway. Shabbona's story didn't start in Illinois. It started long before the white man built fences and called it his. He had been born into a world of rivers and trees, of buffalo trails and sacred fires. His people moved with the land, not through it. They belonged to it. He was raised as a warrior, taught to watch the stars and track silence like it was prey. In his youth, Shabbona had fought the Americans with fire in his lungs. He stood beside Tecumseh in the dream of a native confederacy, dozens of tribes united, one force strong enough to resist the endless press of white expansion. They traveled together, gave speeches, rallied warriors from the Ohio Valley to the Great Plains. He fought at the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811, watched villages burn, saw women and children slaughtered in retaliation for raids they never ordered, saw men he admired shot in the back while trying to parley. And when Tecumseh fell at the Battle of the Thames in 1813, Shabbona knew the dream was dead. So he made peace. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. He laid down his weapons, swore friendship with the United States, and began walking a line no man could hold for long. Half respected, half hated, always watched, he became a bridge between enemies who never really wanted to meet halfway. He served as a scout for the U.S. Army, helped white settlers understand tribal boundaries, languages, customs, helped tribes understand what they would lose if they didn't sign the treaties. He was called a hero by some, a traitor by others, but he believed, truly, that peace could still be carved from what was left. By the 1830s, it was already too late. The Indian Removal Act passed in 1830. On paper, it gave tribes land west of the Mississippi in exchange for the land they'd always lived on. In practice, it meant soldiers, wagons, and the slow machinery of displacement. Tribes that resisted were painted as violent. Tribes that complied were soon forgotten. Black Hawk, Sauk leader, decorated warrior, refused to comply. He had signed no treaty. He had not agreed to give up his homeland in western Illinois. And in 1832, when he led a group of families and warriors across the Mississippi River to return, he wasn't looking for a war. He was looking for home. But the settlers didn't see it that way. Word spread across Illinois like fire in dry grass. Black Hawk has returned. Sauk warriors are here. Indian uprising. Panic followed. Entire communities abandoned homes. Farmers left fields to rot. Militia groups sprang up almost overnight, poorly trained, poorly armed, but very well motivated by fear. And caught in the middle of all of it was Shabbona. He knew what was coming. You could see it in the soil, feel it in the air. Too many treaties, too many promises, too many scars that hadn't yet scabbed. He had been to the edge of war before, and it had that same smell: smoke, sweat, and lies. So he did what no one else could. He mounted his horse and rode. Over 1,000 miles in less than 2 weeks. Across rivers, forests, open prairie, from white settlements to native villages and back again. Warning, pleading, begging both sides not to strike first. Settlers were nervous, yes, but there was still time, he believed. Still a way to avoid the fire. He spoke to generals, to governors, to farmers hiding in barns with rifles that hadn't been fired in 20 years. He offered his own word, his own safety, to vouch for peaceful tribes. "Do not strike first," he said. "You may not survive what follows." But they didn't listen, and while he rode, a spark lit the dry grass. At Indian Creek, a white settler named William Davis dammed a stream. Not unusual, many did, but this one fed into a river used by nearby Potawatomi. The dam choked off fish, tensions flared, arguments, fistfights, warnings. Then on May 21, 1832, a group of angry young Potawatomi, frustrated, frightened, fed up, attacked Davis's cabin. 15 were killed, women, children, 2 young girls taken captive. The newspapers called it a massacre, the settlers called it proof. The army called for blood. Shabbona wasn't there. He had tried to stop it, had spoken with Davis himself weeks earlier, had warned both sides, but words mean little to the dead and even less to those already grieving. The next day, mobs formed. And where mobs go, justice does not follow. Pyps was Shabbona's nephew. He was not a warrior, not yet. Barely 20, quiet, thoughtful, a boy trying to learn how to be a man in a world that didn't care who he became. He lived near Paw Paw, in a small village tucked between hills and wind-worn trees. He had stayed behind while Shabbona rode. He believed his uncle's promises, that the settlers would not harm peaceful families. That trust mattered. That loyalty was remembered. It wasn't. A band of white men, no uniforms, just guns, found him near the edge of a clearing. Some said he was fishing. Others said he was gathering firewood. One account says he was praying. They shot him in the back, then again in the chest, and left his body there to rot in the sun. No charges were filed, no investigation, no apology. The papers didn't even print his name. But Shabbona remembered. He buried Pyps alone. No ceremony, no songs, just earth and silence. And from that silence came a different kind of fire. He did not take up arms. He did not join Black Hawk. But the man who had once believed in the white man's promises no longer spoke of peace. He still rode, still warned families when raids were coming, still led women and children to safety. But he no longer tried to reason with anyone, because reason had died with his nephew. He guided settlers out of burning towns, pointed soldiers away from villages where only elders remained. He saved lives, but his eyes had changed, harder, distant, like a man walking through someone else's dream. The Black Hawk War ended a few months later, not with glory, not with victory, just with exhaustion and grief. Black Hawk surrendered. His band scattered. Many died. Most were forced west. And then the Potawatomi were next. Despite his loyalty, despite his service, Shabbona could not protect his people. Treaties were signed, ignored, then enforced at gunpoint. Most of the Potawatomi were removed to Kansas by 1837. He stayed behind for a time, landless, watched, worn down by decades of betrayal. He was given no home. He squatted on the edges of the land he had once helped keep safe. They called him a relic, an old Indian, something between myth and burden. He never forgave them. When Shabbona died in 1859, the newspapers called him noble, said he had served both sides with honor, that he had helped make Illinois safe. They did not mention Pyps. No monument was built for the boy, no marker where he died, just a whisper on the wind. and a name passed down among those who still remember. Today, Shabona's name is etched in stone, on signs, plaques, the town that bears it. But if you stand at the edge of the woods near Paw Paw, where the grass moves like memory, you might feel something different. Not just history, a presence, the sense that something was stolen and never returned. That peace is not always just. That trust, once broken, cannot be mended with words alone. And that sometimes the stories we forget are the ones that speak the loudest. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.